Good morning, Boker Tov. It should be a good morning for Klal Yisrael. We should have Besoros Tovos. Our hostages should be brought home. Our soldiers should return to their families. We should mark a sweeping victory for Klal Yisrael. We continue our 10 minutes of meeting. Please help yourself to coffee and donuts. And we continue to look for a series sponsor for this shir. We are on the 25th parak of Mesilas Yesharim, the Ramchal. We're finishing up the 25th parak today. And that is the parak on Derech K'niyas Yirah, how to acquire the midah, the character trait of awe. We translate the word Yirah not as fear. It shouldn't be a debilitating, gripping fear, although there's nothing wrong with a little healthy dose of fear, to realize that our actions have consequences, that we are accountable for them. We should recognize that we answer to a higher authority, but also Yirah from a sense of awe. There is someone and something so much bigger than ourselves. We're a little cog in a big wheel. There's so much more going on, and to have the mindfulness and the consciousness to live with that all the time. And the derech of K'niyas Yirah, how do we acquire? How can we live and go through our lives not seeking happiness but holiness, not looking to indulge the next pleasure, but to realize there's a bigger picture, and what is our purpose, what is our mission in it, requires what we saw last time, what the Ramchal calls Hasmadas Hisbonenus V'Estakos HaGadol, to be a Masmid. But not a Masmid in the classic sense of the way we think of the word Masmid. The word Masmid means to be diligent, to be consistent, to be constant. And we think of the Masmid in the form and arena of Talmud Torah. Certainly that is an aspect of being a Masmid. But to be a Masmid also means to be a Masmid in Yirah Shamayim. Not that you have Yirah when you're in shul or when you're learning, but when you're at work or in the marketplace or the mall, then you don't have Yirah, you don't have a knowledge and an awe of Hashem. But to be a Masmid, to be constantly thinking and focusing and mindful. So if mindfulness is the answer, if consciousness, conscientiousness, thinking about the bigger picture, the Ribono Shel Olam, our place in His world, is how we live the most purposeful, mission-driven life, then what is the opposite? What is the antithesis? What is the obstacle or impediment? Nimtza shekmo sherav hisbonenu derech liknos hayirah tzmidis hesach hadas ubitul ha'iyun hu ha'mafsid hagadol shalah. The opposite and the antithesis is bitul ha'iyun, the opposite of being a masmid. If we allow ourselves to be distracted, if we are fragmented, if we are divided, then a person can't live with a sense of awe. You can go through your day and you're so focused on scrolling or keeping up or watching or following or debating or arguing or buying or enjoying. We're so distracted by all the other things. You wake up at the end of the day and you know, Taka, I forgot there's Hashem. I forgot I was going to live this day different than all the others. I forgot I'm here for a purpose and a mission. I forgot I'm capable of discipline and sovereignty over myself. The obstacle, the impediment to a life of Yirah, to the most purposeful life we could have, is Hesach Hadas, is disruption, interruption, is distraction. And never in history have we lived in a time in which that challenge was greater than right now. The gift of technology, which gives a lot of freedom and opportunity and gift, is also a tremendous challenge. A challenge of living a life of Hesach Hadas, of absent presence, a life of multitasking, so we're not really focused, a life of the opposite of essentialism, but being divided across so many platforms and focuses simultaneously. It's the Mafsid Hagadol. It is the greatest distraction. And it doesn't matter whether it's machmas trados. Maybe a person says, I'm overwhelmed by obligation, I'm anxious, I'm worried, and it's all reasonable. Or baratzon, or maybe willfully, they are watching, or they are distracted, or they are indulging. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the cause or the reason. The result is the same. And the result is that if we're not focused and fixated, if we're not very much connected to the bigger picture, to Hashem's presence, to what's our role, to what does He want me to do, to what will give Him nachas ruach, to what am I meant to be doing in this moment, then we easily could find ourselves making the wrong choices, having judgment which is clouded, sabotaging our own success, wasting and squandering time, doing irreparable damage. The answer is to be a masmid, to constantly feel His presence, to constantly know that we are answerable and accountable to Him, to constantly feel His encouragement, His support, and His love, to know He's always by our side and looking over our shoulder. And the moment we allow a Hesach Hadas, which is exactly the pernicious methodology of the Yetzer Hara, the whole way of the Yetzer Hara is to say, to get us distracted, The moment we have Pizur Hadas, the moment Hesach Hadas, the moment we are distracted, unfocused, Yetzer Hara's got us. That's true if we indulge in eating the wrong things late at night that we promised we wouldn't eat. At the wrong time, the wrong quantity, the wrong food. That's true if we're going to say the things we promised we wouldn't say, look at the things we promised we wouldn't look at. How does the Yetzer Hara work? By distracting us, by tiring us, by making us anxious. And then when we are unfocused and we forget what matters, when we lose our compass and our way, then the Yetzer Hara has us in its claws. Hesach Hadas is the kryptonite of a person who's trying to live the most meaningful, purposeful life. And this is why Hashem commands the king. The king has to have a Sefer Torah, 2 Sefer Torah. Why? So that the king can constantly turn to it, look at it, be lifted by it. Leman Yilmad, so he will learn. Liyirah. So what do you mean? The king is a graduate of yeshiva. The king undoubtedly was one of the Mitsuyanim. To rise to the level to be appointed, to be elected a king of Israel, he must be outstanding in the yeshiva, outstanding in shir. So certainly he's learned Torah, certainly he's acquired Yirah. Why would the pasuk say, Laman Yilmad Liyirah? So that the king will learn to live with awe, with fear, with awareness of Hashem. It must be, Yirah is not nilmedes, Yirah is not ever fully acquired. You can never put a check mark, you never say I'm done, you're never finished, you never get a degree, it's never complete. It's minakriya bilti nifsekas. The king walks around with a Torah because we know that power corrupts absolutely, and the king who tastes that power needs to constantly review, constantly recalibrate, constantly return to the moral clarity that only Torah can provide. Usadaktek sha'amar laman yilmad liyirah v'lomar laman yirah l'she'ena yirah azos museges b'teva ki adarabba rechoki mimenu b'nei gashmias hachushim ve'ena niknes ela ayidei limud. It's not something natural, it's not something you intuit, it's not something that's acquired through osmosis or by accident. Laman yilmad, the king has to study. Now you'd say you study lamdus and chakiras and halacha. Yirah is for the people who can't learn. When I was in yeshiva, having good midos and growing in Yirah Shamayim, that was for the people who couldn't learn well. If you were smart, you learned well. Lamdas and halacha, you were the top shiur. And the guy with the Orchos Tzadikim and the Shari Tshuva, the guy walking around preaching midos and Yirah Shamayim, he didn't have such a good cup. That guy, everyone knew you don't learn well, so you had good midos. If you could learn well, you didn't fit. The Ramchal is telling us the opposite. Laman Yilmad, Yirah is a limud. You have to learn it. You have to dissect it, you have to analyze it. There should be chaburas and chakiras. The king, Laman Yilmad, you don't just pick it up. It doesn't happen by accident. It's not that if you learn Gemara Rashi Tosfos, then you're also going to have tremendous Yirah Shamayim. Laman Yilmad, you have to dive into it, you have to learn it. It's not something museges beteva. It's rechoka, because of the gashmis hachushim. Because our body, the guf, that houses our soul, is reinforcing constantly the opposite of Yirah. Don't listen to your moral compass. Don't listen to the neshama. The guf craves. The guf longs for. The guf has a drive and temptation. So how do you learn? You need hasmada. Person has to be a masmid in lemad yilmad liyira. You have to be a masmid not only in learning lamdos and halacha v'chula. You have to be masmid in the sugya of Yiras Hashem, of Yirah Shamayim. V'ushia adam is born in ma'ayim b'davar hazeh tamid b'shifto b'lechto b'shachbo v'kumo at sheyikva b'daito amitas hadavar. Says the Ramchal, when you're going to sleep, when you're waking up, when you're on the road, when you're home, you're constantly learning, thinking about, talking about, engaging others on the topic of Yirah Shamayim, Yirah. Do you see Hashem? Do you hear Hashem? Do you feel Hashem? Do you hear Hashem talking to you? Do you talk to Him? Do you see Him in your world? It's a sugya. It's a sugya. That Hashem is found every. Did you hear that rustle of the trees? That was Hashem. Did you hear that story that seemingly was a coincidence, a randomness? That was Hashem. Do you know that this incredible detail in physics or chemistry, that's Hashem? You have to hear this unbelievable vort from the parsha. It's all Hashem. Everywhere you look and everywhere you see that bird, you see that puddle, that traffic, the delayed flight. It's all Hashem. And if you're a masmid in seeing Hashem everywhere, if you're a masmid in Yiras Hashem, Yiras Shamayim, Hu Mashahaya David HaMelech Mispal v'Omer, Horeini Hashem darkecha, ahalech ba'amitecha, yached levavi liyirah shemecha. Pasuk Tehillim, Pevav, I don't think anyone made it into a song yet. Still plenty of psukim in Tehillim. Horeini Hashem darkecha, maybe the first words, Horeini Hashem. Teach me, Hashem, your way, so I can walk in your truth, ba'amitecha. Yached levavi, unite my heart, liyirah shemecha, so I can live with an awe and an awareness constantly of your presence in my life. That is the derech kniyas Yirah. Says the Ramchal, the way to acquire Yirah is to be a Masmid and to equally be focused on eliminating the impediment. What's the biggest impediment? Distraction. Don't give in to distraction. Don't allow ourselves to be unfocused, to be distracted, because that is the biggest impediment to living this most meaningful life of Yirah. And with that, we complete the 25th parak. We are in the home stretch. Next week, we begin the 26th parak, Be'er Midas HaKedusha. We're up to the next midah in the formula of Reb Pinchas ben Yair, the midah of Kedusha, of holiness. We don't live for happiness, we live for holiness. 15 minutes, 8:45, living with Emunah. Should be a good day for Am Yisrael.